Hey, how's it going? I go by the artist name Jonteal, and this is my first and possibly only tutorial. This is more or less a combination of ideas I've learned over the years, and it's something I've found to be a great option for generating bass lines. Conceptually, the process can be applied to any instrument or sound and to any genre. I think it works especially well within the Neuro Bassline workflow that I like to use. It's basically 3 steps to create one of these bassline generators. You just need to create a sample of audio, chop it up into one-shot samples, and then put those samples on a drum rack. I first learned a similar technique from a Kill Paris tutorial from years ago, but his wasn't a neuro-focused application like this one will be. So let's get into it. First, what you want to do is you want to insert a MIDI channel and an audio channel, and then you want to put an instrument on that MIDI channel, like a serum or something. Here I've got a preset that I already designed that's pretty much a neuro sounding bass, and there's a bunch of tutorials out there that teach you how to make these things. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to go into all that, but basically what you want to do is you want to get this puppy ready to go to where you can start recording. So the way you do that is you go to audio, and then you take that audio source and you take it from the MIDI channel. You want to go ahead and hit record after you've got both channels armed on the right with the red, and as you're recording, you just want to hit the same note over and over. Make sure you leave some spaces in between the notes so that way whenever you edit it, it has a clear beginning and an end of the sample. And this whole technique works really well if you want to use it with, say, a preset you've already designed that is fully formed, or if you just want to start from scratch and do a sound design session and just record the entire session. It works just as well both ways. As you can see here, we've now got our render, our bass sample of everything we just recorded. All the changes we made are now integrated into this audio sample. So we really are kind of done with the MIDI, and we can just focus on the audio now. Next, we want to chop it up. To demonstrate this, I'm going to use a different Neuro bass sample I created recently using this exact same process. I used Audio Hijack Pro, which I would highly recommend to anybody who's into long-form sound design. It's very helpful. Now at this point, I'm going to take the audio of this bass sample and drop it on a new audio track. I'm going to turn the warp off, and I'm going to scan through the sample and look for interesting moments that I like. Once you've selected some sample areas or a sample area that you like, go ahead and add a drum rack. It's at this point I like to turn the warp on and then go to the first sample I want to use. I zoom in, and then I set the warp marker right at the front of the first transient, and then I make sure that the audio begins right at that moment by bringing the arrow right to that point. And then I'll cut it off after the sample as well, so that way I'm only isolating each sample, each one shot per clip. And I'm going to do this to all of them until I have, say, 4 to 8 to 12 or however many is good for you. You'll notice the samples I'm selecting are all from the same area of this overall sample, but I encourage you to explore your sound design sessions and use whatever sounds you're interested in using. Once you've got your clips all isolated, you want to drop each one on a different drum pad but on the same drum rack. They'll each have their own sample editor. For each sample, you want to go in and zoom in on the sample transient and make sure the front is starting right at the front of the transient, and also make sure that the gate is turned on and the trigger is turned off. You should experiment with both settings, but I find that the gate is extremely helpful for creating groove within the bass line that I'm making, because with the gate enabled, as soon as you stop a MIDI note, the sound coming through the MIDI signal will stop. Once you've got all of your samples ready to go, you can go into your drum rack where your samples are sitting, create a MIDI clip, and then you can start drawing in a pattern and testing different ideas out. Notice here how the gate impacts the sound. The length of the MIDI note tells the sound how long to play. And finally, it's time to put the bass sounds in a groove. I took some time and I made a few more samples, and I made a little bit of a drum beat so we could put this all together. First, we can look at the drum beat. I used some samples, a kick and snare from my buddy Restraint. If you've not checked his music out, you most definitely should. Made this quick little beat here. And then here you can see this pattern I made with the bass samples. Here's the extra ones I made and isolated. Remember to use the gate. And I also put on a little bit of an EQ, some multi-band dynamics with very small amount of percentage on it, just to help balance out the volume. A glue compressor with the soft clipper on and a limiter, just to help keep things in control. Let's go ahead and put it in context with the beat. So with that bass line, you can hear some spaces in between, give you an idea how to create some groove. There's a little less space in there with a little bit more intensity. And then finally, well, just no spaces at all. So there you go. You can clearly see how these are very easy to generate. All the sounds are sourced from the same sound design session, and so therefore you're going to have a cohesion built in there from the beginning. So this is really, you can just move these notes up or down and experiment with the sounds that come out of them. Of course, this is just a basic idea that could easily be taken so much further. So I encourage you guys to do that, and please send me what you do. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, that's about all I got on this. I hope it was helpful, and come check me out on SoundCloud and say what's up.